Thank you for joining me today. Please grab a seat. My name is Jarrell. I develop games for a living. Today we will discuss the downward trend of Final Fantasy and Square Enix's reported restructuring. Square Enix is reportedly in financial trouble after numerous big budget projects failed to deliver meaningful return on investment. I will bring up some examples of what is wrong with Square Enix and Final Fantasy and share some advice on potential strategies that Square Enix can employ to remedy the situation. I generally do not ask people to like, comment, and share my videos here, but if you agree with the points of this video, then please like, comment, and share this video so we can reach the relevant people who would benefit from hearing this information. First, Final Fantasy 15 was almost a musical. Why is this a problem? In an interview with IGN posted June 14, 2013, Tetsuya Nomura watched the Les Mis film and wanted to turn Final Fantasy 15 into a musical like Les Mis. In the interview, Nomura stated he watches 2 to 3 movies a night. Now, why is this a problem? This is a problem because it shows a lack of stability and artistic integrity and vision when it comes to the leadership that is in charge of Final Fantasy. If the leadership of Final Fantasy can watch a movie and be so powerfully swayed that they decide to change their game into a musical, it shows that this leadership is not capable of setting a target and sticking to that and following the path that they have set. And imagine how difficult it will be for all of the team members that are developing these games. How are they supposed to feel a sense of stability and direction if the leadership can watch a movie and suddenly think, oh, this has to be like Les Mis. I have to do this like Les Mis. That is the first point of evidence that shows that there is something very wrong with the leadership of Final Fantasy. Secondly, we'll look at the font of Final Fantasy Pixel remasters. It may not seem like a big deal, but the font of Final Fantasy Pixel remasters are illegible. They are ill-fitting, not to mention the previous mobile demasters of Final Fantasy 1, 2, 4, 5, and 6 were incompetently assembled with inconsistent pixel density between environments, characters, and heads-up display elements all clashing. Inappropriate use of texture filtering on environments results in a blurry mess with graphical tiles not blending seamlessly together. All of this combined with the very inappropriate font used in the Final Fantasy Pixel Remaster shows that there is a lack of competence, care, or both. In the event of either would be very damning, but it shows that if management is able to look at the Final Fantasy Pixel remasters, if they are able to look at the font that was used that is not appropriate for the product, if they are able to look at that and say, yes, this is fine, we approve it, let's ship the game the way it is, that is very telling that the leadership of Final Fantasy is not capable of understanding the difference between a good product and a bad product. They are not capable of understanding what the end experience will be like for the end user. I personally can't understand the thought process behind the font choices, and while I understand the game has been updated on some platforms to add new font options to make the font more legible, that is not good enough. The problem is that it was shipped this way to begin with. Next, we'll take a look at Final Fantasy VII Remake. Final Fantasy VII Remake does not tell the story of Final Fantasy VII. Final Fantasy VII Remake tells the story of how popular Final Fantasy VII is, and how the people making it will not be told what to do by their fans. In the Final Fantasy VII Remake, Sephiroth is obsessed with Cloud and is constantly trying to kiss him. Final Fantasy VII is my favorite game of all time, and I was very excited to try the Final Fantasy VII Remake, and I was confused and shocked to find that Sephiroth was introduced into the story very early. And it shows that the writers of the Final Fantasy VII Remake were not interested in telling the story. They were understanding that Final Fantasy VII is very popular, that people know who Sephiroth is, so introduce him early into the story so people can see him. The average exchange of dialogue between Sephiroth and Cloud in the Final Fantasy VII Remake is thus: Cloud, I love you very much. You smell like raspberries. Your breath smells like the summer breeze. Kiss me, Cloud, is the average line of dialogue for Final Fantasy VII Remake. It is a story mocking and criticizing fans for wanting a faithful retelling of the story, and it is too aware of the fact that it is a very popular and well-known game and story. The time ghosts and alternate multiverse story element is obviously copying a popular film. As we know, Tetsuya Nomura is very pliable and easily influenced by popular films. The film in question is Avengers Endgame, which launched April 24th, 2019. Final Fantasy VII launched almost an entire year later, on April 10th, 2020. If you are wondering if that is enough time to make changes to where they add time ghosts and rewrite the story, yes, absolutely. That is enough time. 1 year is plenty of time to shoehorn in the elements of the time ghosts and the multiverse stories. It's plenty time. If someone sits at home watching movies or scrolling through social media all day long, they are not an appropriate leader for creative or artistic endeavors. It means that they are a mental and emotional slave to the marketing machine that is the internet and modern media landscape. A strong creative leader, someone with artistic vision, intent, and integrity, is someone who lives a full, varied life, spends most of their time outside of their home experiencing the world, meeting with and communicating with many people, and who is constantly working to understand the world and the people in it. Final Fantasy does not have that in their leadership at the moment. Let's quickly discuss Forspoken, a game that was developed and published by Square Enix. People who have played Forspoken report that it has incompetently written dialogue, story, and characters which are unlikable. The game has poor performance and optimization and does not live up to the pedigree of developers that Square Enix is known for. Modern Square Enix developers are creating video games with the intent to make a video game. That is a huge problem, but it is not solely a problem for Square Enix. That is the modern landscape. I will say that again. Modern Square Enix developers are creating video games with the intent to make a video game. Now, what is wrong with that? Their intention is to get people on the internet talking about their video games. And this is not how things were done in the past. We did not have social media. We did not have the internet in years past, in decades past. The pillars upon which Final Fantasy was built, Final Fantasy 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8, those were games created to give an experience to the end user. Again, the games were created to offer an experience. These games that we were creating in the modern days, modern games are created for social media and content creator engagement. Again, games of the past were used to give the end user an experience. Games that are created these days are created for social media and content creator engagement. What is wrong with that? The social media and content creator landscape is shaped entirely by ad sponsorship and ad impressions. Social media and content creator landscape is about dulling the senses of the viewer to make them more pliable, to keep them trapped within a marketing loop, to serve them advertisements. This landscape gives content creators a false sense of validation and self-worth because they see they have subscribers and people who worship them, and advertisers serve their products to people whose brains have been turned to mush by brain rot content. The modern gaming landscape, especially the leadership for Final Fantasy, is making games for social media and content creator engagement, not to give the end user an experience. So how do you fix this problem? How do you fix it? Really, the only way to fix this problem, you need old-fashioned mentality. You need old-fashioned values. We have already tried modern values, modern approaches, modern audiences, modern technology, modern digital communications. We have tried all of that and we have seen its failures. What we need now are old-fashioned values and leadership who has a strong enough vision to forge into existence something beautiful that has not existed before. What are old-fashioned values? Well, I'll tell you what it's not. It's not investing in cryptocurrency. It's not using NFTs and leveraging nostalgia to milk your loyal audience for their money. Old-fashioned values are about beautiful artwork that communicates to us on a deeper level, emotional and even spiritual. Old-fashioned traditional values are about focusing on writing a strong story with compelling, likable characters that audiences feel like they are going on an adventure with. Old-fashioned values mean you stand by your convictions and you do not bend your beliefs just because there's a popular trend on the internet. Old-fashioned means setting a target, knowing exactly what you want to create, and creating that thing to the very best of your ability, regardless of what the rest of the world is doing. On a personal level, the reason I became a game developer is because I was inspired by Final Fantasy when I was young. I wanted to make games like Final Fantasy because I wanted to inspire and share adventures with other people. I have developed and shipped more than 12 commercial titles, and I will continue to keep honing my craft and improving my abilities so I can create better art, better game concepts, better stories, so I can create the best possible experiences for people to enjoy. My career includes serving as industry-level digital technology consultant, so now I will propose some potential avenues for creative exploration for Square Enix. I would strongly advise scaling back the budgets and scope of your projects. What I would really like to see, not just as a professional, but as a former fan of Final Fantasy, I strongly advise producing a new Final Fantasy and make it with 2D sprite artwork, 2D environments, and a turn-based menu-driven battle system, but do not do it like the Pixel remasters or HD 2D remasters. Follow the design philosophy of your PSP titles, yes, the Sony PSP, for Final Fantasy 1, 2, and 4. I mean no offense to the pixel artists of Final Fantasy Pixel remasters, I believe they did the best to their ability, but the level of comprehension for color dynamic, tonality, and character posing is extremely weak in the Final Fantasy Pixel remasters. This level of bland, dull sprite work is not where the industry should be heading. It is not what we should be aiming for, especially when you look at the artwork of Final Fantasy games on the PSP. Look at the sprite work for that, and you can see the level of artistry and visual expression that we can achieve. We should be aiming for art like that. So I strongly advise creating a new Final Fantasy, something that plays like a real, proper Final Fantasy with the level of prestige writing that Final Fantasy is known for, but just make it look like the PSP games. It can be subtitled as a spin-off to avoid muddying the brand, which is already a huge problem. Final Fantasy has a very muddy and inconsistent identity right now, which is the exact opposite of Dragon Quest, which has a very strong identity, and they always let players know what they are getting into. If you play a Dragon Quest game, you know exactly what you are going to get. As a longtime Final Fantasy fan and now former Final Fantasy fan, when I see the name Final Fantasy, I feel a negative reaction, and I immediately think, great, what are they doing now? A new 2D Final Fantasy as a core game would show longtime fans that you are willing to listen, that you respect them, and that you will give them the experiences that they want. I personally feel as a fan that over the past decade or so, Square Enix has been quite resentful of me because I enjoyed the older games and they no longer want to make games that are similar to the older Final Fantasies. And I personally feel like Square Enix is resentful towards me. And the reason I feel that is because the developers of Final Fantasy, the people that are leading it, have openly stated that. They have openly stated resentment towards people who enjoyed the older Final Fantasies, and we can see that attitude presented in the Final Fantasy VII Remake. I would strongly recommend a 2D Final Fantasy, as this kind of project would have a much shorter development time and a significantly lower development budget, meaning it is much more likely you will have a strong return on investment. I would advise employing the absolute very best artists for environment and pixel artwork, and make use of higher resolutions of modern hardware and the very best art software we have available today for creating the art. Make sure you have the very best writers who have a strong sense of fantasy and fun, who can write an adventure for your characters, and give the players a fun adventure to embark upon. The recent Final Fantasies have not felt fun. They have not felt like this great grand adventure. They have felt quite serious, trying to be cool and trying to style match something like Game of Thrones. In order to do this, you need to step away from modern media, step away from social media, spend time exploring and examining the media and history of the 1990s, because that is the golden age which birthed the very best Final Fantasy games, games that have fun, adventure, and fantasy. Secondly, and very importantly, stop attempting to appease armchair activists who scream loudly in their toxic echo chambers on the internet. Those people do not buy your video games, and if you attempt to appease them, you are no longer creating a product as a good, positive experience. You are creating something for social media engagement. Third, stop wasting time and resources chasing the latest money-making schemes. Low-quality mobile games with monetization, cryptocurrency, NFT, all of those things have dragged Square Enix and Final Fantasy down from being a prestige brand into somewhat of a joke for gamers. I no longer feel excitement when I hear the brand of Square Enix. I no longer feel excitement when I hear Final Fantasy. And it is largely because of these business practices that seem very desperate to squeeze people for money. The next full mainline Final Fantasy, which undoubtedly will have big, fancy 3D graphics, should not be chasing modern trends. It should not be trying to be a dark, gritty Game of Thrones ripoff. Re-examine what the core identity of Final Fantasy is. Scale back the scope and budget of your large 3D games and just produce something that is fun and that is fantasy. The current leadership of Final Fantasy is not capable of doing that. They are not capable of taking Final Fantasy in a good direction. As a former Final Fantasy fan, if I personally saw a full-scale 2D game that looked like Final Fantasy 4, 5, or 6 on the PSP, but with high-resolution, beautiful 2D artwork, if I saw that, I would buy it immediately, and I would immediately feel, oh, I'm a Final Fantasy fan again. I will return to Final Fantasy if I see a 2D game that looks like the PSP Final Fantasy 4, 5, or 6. If I see a new, full, real Final Fantasy game like that, I would return to Final Fantasy. Those are just my thoughts on the state of Square Enix. I hope this information has been interesting or meaningful to you in some way. Thank you for listening. I wish you all the best. Please be well. Have a great new year. I hope your 2026 is bountiful. Be well.